In this lesson, we'll take a few minutes to discuss some things that you'll want to be aware of regarding cloner transformations and coordinates. So we've already seen in one of our earlier lessons how the actual positions of an object are completely overridden once we actually apply this to some kind of a cloner. Now we can prove this if I were to take something like this cube, and I'll just really push this pretty far up out of the way, so it's somewhere over here. Now let's come in, we'll drop this into a cloner, and you can see as soon as my cloner is applied that the positions of my cube jump to wherever this cloner happens to be. So again, completely overrides wherever the actual cube position would be, or whatever object I happen to be cloning. So here's a little trick that you might find useful for actually getting around that. What I'll do is just take that cloner and just remove that. Now, what I'll do is select my cube, or whatever object I want to actually clone. Now, let's say I actually want my cloner to occur at this position. So what I could do, again with my object selected, I can go up to my MoGraph menu and now Alt-click on this cloner. And so you can see it will now automatically create the proper parenting relationship, and it's automatically placed my cloner right wherever my original object used to be. So now I can still come in, make all my adjustments, and everything should work exactly as we would expect. And what we should see now is if I were to come in and turn on any kind of another object and add that into my cloner list, you can see it now gets added at this original position. Now, when it comes to actually moving your cloner around, there are a couple of different ways of doing this. So one is to actually go into your coordinates for your cloner object, and we could start to adjust the X, Y, and Z positions through this area, or we also have this transform menu where we also have some of these same options. Now, at first glance, you might think that these two areas actually do the same thing, but that's really not the case. If we actually wanted to pick up our cloner and move it, so if I were to select it and actually grab it and start to move it here in the viewport, you notice it's actually changing the coordinates that we see here, but as we take a look in the transform, you'll notice that nothing is happening. So really, the coordinates here are exactly the same thing that we see in the coordinates down in our coordinate manager. So if I were to come in and actually want to explicitly place this object somewhere, we can do that through this coordinates. Now, the transform is really what you can think of as a little bit more like an offset. So if I were to come in here and adjust my transform, you can see that it is actually moving this cloner object, but you can see that the center of my cloner is still at its original point. So if I were to come in and let's say rotate this for any reason, you can see it's still rotating around that original point. Okay, so just something to keep in mind as you're working through this, and as you start to get to a point where you're having to move your cloners around and reposition those. Just keep in mind that there are two very, very distinct ways of doing that. But again, each one of these methods might be somewhat useful. So if you actually wanted this entire cloner to rotate around a different point, this actually does become a really, really useful way of being able to do that. Just coming into your transform, coming in here, and just sort of offsetting your cloner. And now you can come in and rotate or make whatever manipulations you might choose to do. Okay, so that's really just a couple of things to keep in mind regarding the overall positioning and the placement of your cloner objects.